All right, what's up, everybody? Joined today by our very own Paul Neese, Jim Hamilton, of course, and outfitter, ambassador,
wild man,
yeah, manimal. Remi, you're one of the few people that I give manimal status to.
Yes.
And general nice guy, Remi Warren.
Howdy.
Hey.
Did you know Manimal was actually like a TV show? Did you ever watch that show?
I remember that.
Really?
I remember hearing that.
It was short-lived, but when we did Apex Predator, we were going to maybe call it Manimal. And then we did the research, and we were like, dang it, this is the show we want to be. It was like you could transform into different animals, but he's a man. It was great.
That really was the premise of the show?
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
Yeah.
What was the premise of the original?
No, that was.
Oh,
that was it.
It
That
was like a
the
man who
original,
could be like an iguana or like a T-Rex.
Yeah, but he was more like a. What did he fight crime or something? I don't
remember either.
I can't even remember if it's
I
good.
remember the name. I remember the general idea.
I remember
but not
like
the details.
Yeah, it's pretty corny.
Well, we're giving everybody their big takeaway right off the bat. Watch Little Manimal.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm not gonna. It might be like a. Maybe he was like
absolutely
maybe he fought
terrible.
against hunters. I have no clue. I don't think it was like that involved. It's just a quick search and remember like we got to
find
it's like
something
a
else.
1-season show. But
Yeah,
You can't backpedal now, Remi. We're in too deep.
yeah.
too deep.
But so, and I shouldn't. I've been remiss to mention getting back on track here, which we rarely do. But we've Paul Neese here, which we've covered before. Previous guide as well. For how many years again, Paul?
Yeah, that was, that's what I did before Vortex. I spent about 17 years as a guide in Idaho.
Yeah.
So guiding for sheep, deer, elk, mountain goat.
Cool.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
I had the good fortune to work for a guy that was permitted in the state of Idaho to some of the really coolest sheep country there. So I really got the bug to do that.
Yeah.
By far and away my favorite thing to hunt and guide for.
Which, none of us were lucky enough to draw some sheep tags.
No, we
earlier
all
today.
bombed out today here, so no luck on that.
But so, Remi, now you're coming off about a 5-day bender
Yep.
of zero sleep and lots of hunting.
Yeah, but I would never complain about it. You just keep powering through. And I was like, "Where are you hunting this time of year?" I was hunting in Hawaii. So it was.
Oh,
like,
dude.
you can't say
complain
anything.
too
You're like,
hard.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I haven't slept. Well, because when I flew here, it was one of those deals where you leave at, like, you're going to leave at, like, noon, and then you end up leaving at 5, and then all your flights are missed, and then it ends up being a 2-day ordeal to get here, where I got in at, like, 3 a.m., and my next flight was at 6 a.m., and then I'm here, and I can't sleep on a plane for some odd reason because it's uncomfortable.
It is.
But,
You end up in just that weird half sleep.
Yeah, so if I stutter or something, it's because I'm sleep deprived.
All of a sudden, snores start coming through the.
Exactly.
We'll give you a pass on that.
I know when my blink rate's just like, it's like it lingers. You're like trying to not stay awake, you're just nodding. Yeah,
That's part of the life of a guide, though.
Yeah,
Long
exactly.
stretches of
You get-
low sleep and misery and.
that I was actually just telling. I think it was Mark that it was like, I'm really good at staying awake, but I never learned the sleep fast trick. And you just like through guide season, you almost build like a tolerance where you're used to 5 hours of sleep, and then when you're not guiding, it's like 5 hours of sleep. You can't sleep more because that's all you get, and you just develop this weird thing. It's like the more tired I get, the harder it is for me to go to sleep. I don't know what it is. It's like but you've trained yourself.
Like a death spiral.
Yeah, but you've like
almost.
trained yourself to just run on very little sleep.
Yeah.
Which is good. I'd never complain about not getting enough sleep because that's just what you do.
Yeah. I've heard. I think I have read. The more you try to stay awake or fight to stay awake, or if you're in a situation where you have to do that for a long period of time, like your body, just like you said, you trained it and it won't shut down. It's like you've programmed it to be that way.
Yeah.
So
I'm not good at that.
you're not going to be sleeping anytime soon, Remi. I'm sorry.
No, I think the longest I stayed awake, I can't even remember. It was almost 4 days. And
That's
I
a
didn't
good
know,
stretch.
but it was like
Did this have anything to do with guiding?
No, but I started hallucinating, and then
I've been in the same spot,
I essentially
yeah.
blacked out. and it was weird because I don't even remember how I got to where I lost some memory. I was in a car, and at least I wasn't driving, don't worry. But it was weird, like travel thing. And man, it was really strange. Everything looks weird, and you're like, it's a trip.
It is very bizarre. I've never gone 4 days. I think I've gone 50 hours, 55 hours.
Yeah, it was probably
maybe.
somewhere in there. It was like
I definitely remember getting the stage of hallucinating because that's stuck in me ever since.
I think it was that like 3 days of, and then you're like kind of going into that. I don't remember much about it, but I remember it was weird.
Are you like slamming caffeine when you're doing that, or is this all like just like?
Yeah, I think Red Bull had just come out. I was like, oh, Red Bull.
That sounds good.
Why would you drink water?
There's water in Red Bull somewhere.
It was a weird. I don't remember, but I think I was going somewhere, and then I thought, oh, I don't want to be like jet lagged when I get there, so I'm just going to stay up. Well, then I stayed up, but then things started happening, and then it ended up being longer, and then I had nowhere to go, and it was just a long story. But I ended up. I wouldn't like suggest it, but it was a cool experience to understand what sleep, like true sleep deprivation is,
does,
and how what your body.
Yeah,
it's weird. It's a very you have
it's
to sleep. You die if
strange.
you don't sleep.
It almost
like,
gets to
weird.
the point, probably similar to what someone would be taking drugs. I mean, just a very odd, hallucinogenic. Just a different, colors and flashes of light, and
and then you feel hungover. And I'm pretty sure I was blacked out, but I remember at one point I was asleep, but my eyes were open, so you see everything. Like you're so tired, your eyes don't even close. You just see things moving around you in this weird. I don't know.
It was one hell of a music festival.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what this has to do with guiding, but you just sometimes you push yourself.
Yeah.
I think that is a good point. I had one good week like that, and just all those similar things, like you said, just like being asleep, but your eyes are open. Or actually, I had a few times where I did fall asleep momentarily, but I felt like I was actually dreaming in the very real scenario of what was going on, and then I'd like open my eyes, and like the person that was in the room like wasn't doing what they were doing, but they were still in the room. It was really weird. And it was just it was all sleep deprivation. That's not good. Don't do it.
I couldn't do it. If I go, I'm the kind of person where it's like 9:30 p.m. and I'm like, Jiminy Christmas, I got to hit the sack.
Yeah, it was funny. It was always like for me. I'm sure you too, Remi. It was the times that were always where it was like early archery seasons. Those were the ones that just ran you into the ground.
Yep.
You'd very little sleep at night.
Yep.
You'd conk for maybe a couple hours.
Why is
you'd
that?
Get up.
Particular
just because the days are really long, and then like the hunting I did, we were typically out on horseback. A lot of times, you would hunt till dark or thereafter, get back to your horses. You might have an hour and a half horseback ride back to camp, then and then you're waiting maybe for another party or two that's out. So I mean, you're not eating dinner sometimes till midnight, and get to sleep, and then you get the cook is banging out in the tent by 2:30 the next morning, getting up to get going again, and then it's going out, wrangling up the horses, feeding the horses, coming in for breakfast, and I'd get to those stages, and I would just be dearly looking forward to about 10:30 in the morning because I knew at that point I could lay on a hillside somewhere and crash out in a nap. The morning hunt was pretty much wound down, and I knew I'd get that midday nap, and I just look forward to that nap. But the good thing you had the morning hunt ahead of you, which of course for me, typically that was the best time we hunted was there in the morning.
Yeah, morning.
You knew that sleep was coming right at. Once that died down, it was like nap time.
On my first guiding job, I was just pumped to be there. Like I really wanted this job, and so I was guiding the Swan Valley of Montana for an outfitter up there, and I didn't really know the area that well, but I went in ahead of time and just scout. I was just running trails and just learning it. And I figured it out pretty good, pretty fast while I was scouting. But the clients showed up, and it was archery season. It was the first week of archery season, so super long days.
Yeah.
And then we're hunting, and I just for some reason can't nap, especially then. Now I've gotten but I'm not very good at napping. So, and I just wanted to I would let them nap, and I would just be glassing or doing something. I wanted to prove that I could do this.
You were going to find critters.
Yeah, I was going to do right. So I get back to camp the second night of the hunt of maybe a 8-day hunt or something like that, and the outfitter had a heart attack and just had to go to the hospital. And there was just a note, like, now I'm in charge of cooking. And the cook was the only other person. So it was just the outfitter, the cook, myself, and the 2 clients. So there was like a note, like, we are gone. So now I'm in charge of feeding the horses, getting up and cooking breakfast, cooking dinner, cleaning up, feeding the dogs, and then going. I literally slept an hour or 2 a night.
Yeah, that's tough.
And by the last day, and I refused to nap. I was just, and the last day we decided to sit on this trail where these big whitetail were coming out. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying not to fall asleep. And I was just passing out. I remember passing out and the hunter like tapped me on the shoulder. He's like, dude, you should just sleep. Like, I don't care. Like, we had like a phenomenal hunt. Like, you're good. And I wanted to, I was going gourmet. I wasn't just throwing cereal down. I was going bacon and eggs.
Wow,
and,
you were.
Outdoing yourself.
Yeah, I think that week, I don't even remember. I calculated it out between gas to get there in my truck that got 7 miles to the gallon and all the hours. I think I made like less than $1 an hour. And I thought to myself, I want to do this for the rest of my life. Like, it was, I was laughing the whole time because I was like, they don't even know I do this for free. What a bunch of idiots. I was like, score. And the guys, you know, they saw, they actually didn't end up shooting anything, but we got on some, you know, good stuff.
Yeah.
It was a really good week. And they're just blown away by how hard I worked. And they were just, you know, they were just normal jobs, blue collar guys, and they gave me like $1,000 tip. And I was like, even with that, it was like $1.50 an hour. And I was like, oh man, this is how you do it. You just bust your ass and you can like survive. This is great. I loved it. It was awesome.
Dang,
and from that time forward, I did not want to do anything else. And I still to this day, I still love guiding. There's something about just taking someone out. And, you know, a lot of times, like, I think it's the best test of your skill as a hunter because you have to take someone that may or may not have any skill, but, like, you have to not only be aware of yourself, but them and get them the shot. And you have to think about so many factors because you might only get one opportunity in that week.
Yeah.
And you have to make that one opportunity count. Plus, like, it's cool to be able to give someone an experience where you love to be so much, and show them what you like. Like, it's a cool thing. Unfortunately, though, I have to preface this because if we're talking about guiding, I get so many inquiries about guiding that, you know, we're like completely booked up with repeat clients. So for all the people that like inquire and want, I just can't answer all the emails about the guiding and stuff. So unfortunately, a lot of phone calls go underserved and emails go unanswered, and I feel like an a-hole. But it's just me. It's a small operation. I don't have 20 employees to be answering stuff.
That's a sign of a very successful operation when you're pretty much rolling on repeat clients, and it's very hard for a new client to you know a guy's good. Then that's like the first thing you look for.
If you can't get in, and that's the hardest part. Is people are like, can you recommend anyone else? If there's someone that I would recommend, you wouldn't be able to go with them. And that's
exactly the same situation. Yeah.
What I do is I just do like a wait list. So they just email the word wait list. Because when it comes up, I just search in the email wait list. And if that's in there and there's a spot available, you have a chance. But outside of that, no replies, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I just have to say that because every time I talk about guiding, I'm like, oh, he guides, and then I want to hunt with him, and then I'm like, that guy's an asshole. He never called me back. Like, I just can't. Like, we've got our some guys have hunted with me now. This will be their 10th or 11th year.
That's a good stretch for
that's
a
awesome.
client.
That's pretty cool.
That's cool. It's like you're now at this point, you're just hunting with your buddies.
It is, exactly the same thing. You know, after a guy's been back a couple times, you strike up these pretty good relationships. You know, time spent in the field like that guiding is very, very intense, and it is kind of amazing how in the scheme of things, seems like a very short time that you spend with guys. But I've got guys that I guided on hunts and I haven't even seen in 10 years. And you come back and you pick up a conversation almost like you just left the mountain. I mean, it's amazing how that intensity of being with someone, you know, I mean, you're 24 hours a day. You're pretty much with them every day. And a lot of times you're going through stuff like just bad weather, harsh conditions, you know, maybe it's tough hunting, whatever it is.
A miss
but
or
just
whatever.
stuff that kind of, I mean, it's amazing how it forges a quick relationship like that.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about that the other day. Just if you want to, you know, truly bond with somebody, go on a hunt with them, you know, and hopefully it's somebody that you enjoy.
Yeah, because it can be good or bad. Like, every guide has some horror stories. I have, and those are the ones that everybody wants to hear. And they're, I would say, 10%, not even less than 10%.
Less than that, yeah.
I'd say, 1 in 100 are bad, but those bad ones are just so memorable
you
and
never
so
forget
funny.
them. Yeah.
You go, That's what my dad, when we were kids, he just always stressed, like having a good hunt. You know, me and my dad were hunting buddies because we'd gone out hunting with other people and it just wasn't fun. They just didn't hunt the way that we like to hunt, or they, you know, and it was just, it's such a different experience being out there that you have to be with people you trust and enjoy. And it's not worth your time to go out with people that you just don't want to be around.
Right.
Are the worst ones basically just when you have somebody who's kind of cupcaking it a bunch and you just can't get them to do like anything? Or is it that like, or are they just like super creepy or like,
Creepy.
super creepy?
Yeah. It's
not safe with firearms.
that's a big one. Yeah.
That's a big one. You know, I've got some fun stories about like guys that didn't speak English. Just like some random stuff.
I could see that being challenging.
A little bit.
And not that they were bad, but just like a language barrier when they've got guns and never used a gun, and just and working for a guy
that would not be a good situation. Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
How does one become a guide? Is it like, how does that how does that work? How does that happen? You just say like, "Hey, I'm a really good hunter. I'll take somebody out." I mean, you have to be like licensed, right?
Oh yeah.
There's probably a bunch of different ways guys get into it. I know the way I did, it was pretty funny. I'd hunted since I was a kid, and I think I knew since I was in my teens, late teens anyway. You know, I grew up in Wisconsin, the Midwest, but my dad taught college, and we spent summers out in the mountains of Colorado. So I already kind of knew what the mountains were, and I really loved the mountains. I loved the big country, the elevation, the wildness, all of it. And I think I knew by my teens that I really wanted to hunt out west. And I ended up, went to college, came out of that, went into business with my brother, spray painting barns in my mid-20s. And it was tough, physical, hard work. And I kept kind of coming back to that hunting thing, and I knew that somehow I needed to circle back to that. And as in my late 20s, I just at some point I don't know, I hit a switch, and it was like I sold everything I had down, no debts, no money, just a pile of money, I had an old truck and a boat, and I signed up for a guide school, which you can still find today. You can find them online. There's all kinds of them out there. And I just kind of really rolled the dice on a guy up in northwestern Montana, talked to them a few times and said, signed up to it. I'm coming out here in June. And put all my stuff in the back of this old boat, drive out there, went to school with a guy. And it was one of those deals, and that's actually a pretty big lucrative business. And I think some of it is there's scam artists out there for sure. A lot it is, yeah.
I could tell you guide school stories.
There are bad, and I probably got lucky in a way. Although, looking back on, I think the guy that I went to it, he was a bit of a scammer too. But it wasn't like I loved to hunt. I knew hunting. I didn't need any, and even going from the Midwest to the West, it didn't take me that long to know how to hunt animals in the West. But for me, I kind of wanted to be in there with a horseback guy, and I had very little background in horses. I'd ridden horses a little bit as a kid, but not much. And I really wanted to do like the classic Western pack strings, wall tent camps way back in the middle of nowhere. And so to me, it proved valuable in that sense. I learned a lot about packing with horses. I didn't know, became very comfortable with horses. And, in fairness, the guy did at the end of that school, he did have legit connections. And, and if you wanted to work, he would give you a reference out there. And I moved down into Idaho then at the end of that. met a guy, guided for him, and I guided for the same guy for the next 18 years. So, I mean, it kind of all played out well in the long run doing that. So,
yeah. I think, because I get asked that a lot, like, how do you become a guide? And there's 3 ways. So, I guess there's 3, you got to look at it like this. Okay. So your story is completely opposite of my story. And it depends on the type of hunt you want to do, but you really touched on, so the guide school thing, everyone goes, oh, is the guide school good? So if you have like a lot of people ask me like, oh, I want to be a guide, and they have no elk, they want to be an elk guide, but they have no elk hunting experience. You know, like, are you going to be an accountant, but you do not know how to do math? You know what I mean? You're just
exactly.
like, oh, I don't know addition, but I want to be an accountant. And then
Yeah.
you start putting in an application. You're going to get laughed at. People are going to be like, I don't care how much you hunt. Like, if you want to be an elk guide and you've never seen an elk, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not
Right.
going
You're
to
not going to be very good at it.
You aren't going to get a job.
Yeah.
Unless
Right.
a guy's desperate and just needs a body.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they're going to have a shitty operation
I was
and
gonna
you
say
just
that-
aren't going to have a good time.
That's the guy that's wide open.
Right. Yeah. That's the guy.
Yeah.
You're like, oh,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have an opening and the draw's 2 days away. That's great. Yeah. that's what you're getting.
Yeah.
No, but so now if you don't have like elk hunting experience, the best way to get into guiding is through the guide school. But you have to realize that you're a horse hand
Exactly.
first,
You're
not
gonna,
a guide.
You're going to start
and
out
you're going to
packing.
start
Yeah.
out, horse handling, and you're going to probably be in a camp as a wrangler, and
Exactly.
you're going to
Yep.
get not that much elk hunting experience, but you need to move to where there are elk and
Yeah.
get that experience. Because when you send an application, and you got to know what kind of operation you're sending it to,
Right.
because you'll send it to an operation that might be a elk guide on private land, and you just finished a guide school, and they're going to go no. So because you have horse experience that can be taught, but you don't have the elk experience that you can't be taught in
Right,
school.
right.
You need to be out in the field.
That's
So you have to
learn
work
is-
up to
yeah,
it.
yeah,
And there's a
yeah.
ton of turnover on guys in the guide school because they might get a wrangling job. It's tough work. It's long hours. You got to be like a camp bitch for a few years,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
you
yeah,
really do.
it's not.
And you
It's
have
not
to-
an easy road to
But
follow.
you can.
Yeah.
But you can, if you have the determination to do it, you can make it and become a guide and
Yeah.
do all the stuff and,
Yeah.
and work for a good operation and have fun doing it.
Yeah.
But the other way is, if you elk hunt a lot in a certain area, know the area. Like, so you got to see what kind of hunts and what kind of job you want to apply for. So my thing was, I knew an area in Montana, and I knew it because I'd hunted it as a kid with my grandpa, but also I just said, I want to be an elk guide. And I just essentially packed up my truck, went up there. It's like, I'm going to know this area better than anyone. Like, how can you not get a job if you know an area and
That's
you're the
pretty
guy
valuable.
killing, and
Yeah,
you're the
yeah.
guy killing elk all
Yeah.
the time?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. I was out there and I kept running into this outfitter, and I was ahead of them on the elk every day. I wasn't like following, like they were essentially following me. the guy came to me and he's like, hey, instead of working against me, you want to work for me? I was like, how'd you know? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Is it great? And it wasn't intentional,
good
but it
story.
was kind of intentional.
I was going to say,
because
that's like
I
a
was-
classic. If
I
you
would
can't
just-
beat them, join them.
Yeah, and I mean, if I wouldn't shoot my bull because I would just hold out, and I would take just random people I met at the trailhead. They're like, I've never seen an elk. I was like, come with me, and we'd go and shoot. I mean, I was guiding people for free, essentially, just like taking friends or anybody. I literally like helped so many people I met at the trailhead kill elk because I just wanted the experience of knowing that area better than anyone.
Wow,
And I
that's-
scouted it and I learned it. And it was kind of a funny thing because like my first year working for that guy, I mean, I literally would just go out every day, whether it's season or not, just learning the area. And I just made this like, I'd make these little bets in elk camp when I was guiding. Like, you can go out wherever you want, take a photo, can be close up. Doesn't even have to be the skyline. I'll tell you where you were. Because I knew it that well, like the types of trees and the grass and the orientation of the hill, and I could just tell where you were in this area based on a fairly up close picture of something.
That's
and I
pretty
generally
good. Yeah,
didn't
that's
lose.
pretty darn good.
And like to
Yeah.
know something literally like the back of your hand, you're gonna get a job as a guide. So
Yeah,
start
that's
where
weird.
if you know some like and that only works on, I would say, probably like public land type hunts that are day use or like the backcountry hunts, the horseback hunts, you don't have to know the area that well because not many people that get hired do because you don't pack into that area. You need to know horses. Right. So if you know horses, you get those jobs. If you know an area, you get like a day use. Type
it was,
job
where we went, we packed in, but not wildly deep pack-ins.
Yeah.
I think the furthest we went in was maybe 7 hours on horseback, which is, that's a fair stretch. It's 20 miles or so back in. But, we, at least in Idaho, the way it worked, and, an outfitter's permitted to a specific block of country and no one else can commercially outfit in there. So once you're licensed to an area, you are the only one that can commercially guide in there. And then, of course, you get, you're familiar with that, Remi. You get permitted camps that you can have, basically permanent camp locations that stay up. You have that place reserved year-round to hunt out of. And kind of the same way. I may not have gotten quite as intensive as you did there, but same way. I'd know where every water trickle, wallow, trail, all of that, because we hunted the same country year after year after year, and and to me that was always the definition of what made a really good guide, was that you knew that, just like you're describing, you knew that country by the back of your hand, you knew every place that elk hung out and moved and all of that, and same deal, just repeated over time in there and hunting it.
And I think like the third way would be, guys looking for a job on like a private land elk hunt, and those you just need to know elk. You just have to be like a good elk hunter, because if you know elk, then it doesn't matter where you go, you know how to hunt them. And on private land,
skills,
nobody has the, you can figure it out because there's nobody else hunting it. And you know what I mean? It's not like you can just go in there anytime you want and know the area. Everybody that works for them, they're just looking for guys that know elk.
Right.
So when you're looking for a guide job, specify, just like any other job, what your skills in. This is elk guiding, but the same goes for anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
and too that when you're, there's a big difference between public land and private land, and when you're guiding on public land, a fair share of your skills and talent are being able to play off what other guys are doing out there, where other camps are, where guys are coming from, where they're going to be hunting opening mornings. And you just know, from time and experience, how guys typically move in those countries. So you can play off of that in what your hunting strategies are, where private land, generally you don't, like you said, you can focus on just being a guy that knows elk and can concentrate on what elk are going to do and how they're going to move and where they're going to be at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Public, it's different though.
It is.
When you got,
it's a different game.
When you got the other guys out there, you always have to factor that into like your plans for the day about where you're going to go and where you're going to be the opening morning or whatever it is. And,
yeah. It's as much a game not against other people, but it's like
using them as pawns almost sometimes.
Yeah.
So, you know that they may push elk a certain way, and and you're prepared to be there at the right time. Yeah.
I think I'm going to go be a private land elk guide, but I'm actually going to go the Remi route, where I'm just going to go hunt some dude's place, and when he confronts me, I'm going to say, hey, I'm just looking for a job.
Hey, I know your land.
And by the way, I know your place really, really well.
Okay, that would be like, can you imagine if somebody just like, you just walked into that room in your house that you rarely ever go into, and somebody just pops out with a broom and dustpan? They're like, hey, I really know your house really well. I'd love to clean it. Whoa.
Hey, that's crazy.
Yeah, now that you're here.
But
that's where that phone call with just the breathing was coming from.
Yeah. I think, though, for some reason in my mind, maybe because I'm so close to like Western hunting and that's what I do, I feel like if you want to be a guide, that's like the epitome of guiding is like Western hunting or Alaska hunting.
No question.
But if you don't do that, look to start guiding where you live. Like if you hunt Michigan and you're like, look for some stuff around where you live to kind of use the skills that you have. Because as you gain experience guiding, you gain a lot of hunting experience as well that you can't get when you aren't doing it as a job. Because I used to think when I was starting out, I was fairly young, 18, 19, and I'd be taking these guys that were 3 times my age, but in 1 year I had more hunting experience than they had in their entire lives. I would go 120 consecutive days with no breaks hunting. Like most people have never hunted that much in their life. And you go, okay, you gain the experience, but you can't do that unless you have like some crazy
No
benefactor
question.
that's like, go hunting, friend.
Yeah, no question.
Like you gain so much experience, and then by gaining that hunting experience, not only benefits you when you hunt, but it gives you experience to get other jobs guiding for other species because you just know how to hunt. You've fine-tuned all the things that not only just hunting, but also that guiding aspect of it.
You think about, just sitting here talking about this, interesting, bringing back memories, but you think about, and there's a lot more. This is all the stuff we're talking about here. It's all like key. It's a big part of being a guide. Then there's all these other stuff. Like you've got to be able to babysit people and motivate people, and Remi, you've been there. The guys that you go with run a whole spectrum, from guys that are like highly motivated to guys that are just really easygoing, to guys that are way out of shape, to guys that can like go hard for a day or two and then poof, like hit a wall and they're done. It's like there's this whole mental thing that goes on at the same time. And the other thing then is also you're trying to figure out like guys' temperaments and their personalities, and trying to, sometimes like you meet a guy and within minutes that this hunt's going to be kind of tough putting up with this guy. You can tell right away, it just doesn't like mesh with me really well. But yet, you're going to make the best of it. You're going to take the guy out. You're going to try to get an animal, have him a good time. But you're probably not going to mesh with this guy the whole time, and so you're having to kind of gear yourself. And so it's just, there's a lot of interesting parts to that.
Maybe that's why Paul's so good at getting along with everybody he meets.
Maybe it is. That's a big part of that job, though. It is. I hunted with plenty of guys that I knew, if we were outside of a guiding situation, I probably wouldn't want anything to do with them. And have no patience with them, and
And then there's also like you have to have a certain personality type that's, you kind of have to be a jack of all trades. You have to cook, you have to entertain, you have to get along with people, and then it's almost like a psychological game as well. That it's almost as fun as the hunting, in a weird way.
Oh yeah,
but there's like, as the outfitter, which an outfitter just means that I'm allowed to take money and book the hunts, and I hold the permits and everything, and then I hire guides. But I also am a guide, so I also take people out actively. Not all outfitters do; a lot do. But when guys come into camp, I kind of know everybody's personalities and can suss it out. Like you get really good at reading people.
Yeah, and a good outfitter. Like if you're an outfitter and you've got a half a dozen guides, same deal. You get really good at kind of pretty quickly like which client is going to mesh with which guide, and conversely, the ones that they're like oil and water. It's like, man, these two guys, they're never going to work together.
Is that like sometimes like a game time decision too? Like kind of once camp starts to suss itself out a little bit, you kind of like, yep, you're going
usually
over here.
Like the guy I worked for, he'd have that. He'd know, because typically like a lot of his clients were repeats, just like you were saying yours were too, Remi. So he kind of had a pretty good sense. He knew the temperaments of his guides, and he knew for the most part, unless it was a new client, kind of had a feel for the way guys were. It was funny, you could dive deep into telling stories, but I can remember a story. There was one guy, and he was a repeat client, wealthy guy. You couldn't turn him down. He just forked the money over, rebooked hunts every year, but he was an obnoxious guy, and he would go through like one guide after another. And I remember I knew this guy was out there, and eventually I think it went like 4 or 5 years, and it finally came up like my turn to take this guy out in elk hunt. And and by that time I thought I was pretty good at that. I could deal with just about anybody. And so it went pretty well with this guy. He was doing pretty well, but it was like a mid-season archery elk hunt. It sucked. It was tough. It was warm. The moon was bright. The elk weren't bugling. It was destined to be a hard hunt. And it kind of drug on, and it was funny. And by 2/3 of the way through that hunt, I knew that like that temperament, it was just coming out, and he was just souring on me and getting tough, and he didn't want to go out, he didn't want to get up, he didn't want to hike, and then it got down to like the last day of the hunt, and it'd been really tough. We just had very few opportunities on that hunt, and finally we got into a pretty hot bull, and he was bugling, and we were just trying to chase him, keep up with him, follow him, at some point try to get ahead of him, and I finally, the guy just ran out of gas completely. He just flat. I mean, he gave up. He just sat down on a log, threw his bow down, and he just would not go. And the elk was just, I mean, he was like a couple hundred yards away, just bugling, calling, and he just, like, he hit his limit. I could not motivate that guy. I tried everything I could do, and it just, man, when it went bad, it went bad. And that was it. And then he practically threatened to make me carry him out of there, and he wouldn't walk back to the horses, and yeah, it was not good.
Yeah, I imagine, Remi, I mean, going off what Paul's saying there, at times you probably have to be part, like you said, part motivational speaker, part psychologist. I mean,
oh yeah, I think when I first started guiding, I wasn't as good. I don't know. I would tell people off. I wasn't as diplomatic about things, but also, you know, my theory was like, I'm just going to push them as hard. Now I'm smarter about things and utilizing people's energy levels. But I remember I would say 50% of my guys on the first day, like when I started out when I was younger, would puke the first morning. You know, because they just weren't used to it. They'd eat a big breakfast, and I'd be like, we're going up this mountain. And my thing was, like, I will walk just far enough away where you can see me, but you can't catch me to tell me that you can't go, because if you don't catch me, you will die out here. So it's like, you're just going to keep going. Yeah. And at the end,
just
like,
just
they
loved
it. It was
there.
like, it was probably the worst, is like the best worst experience. Because I think sometimes when how many times in your life are you like truly pushed, but the reward is so great. And I would get, and I'm a nice guy, you know, but, they enjoyed hunting with me, and I'd push these guys that really were not designed for elk hunting. And they would come back the next year with a goal, and like everybody that I've ever guided has lost weight by the second and third time that they come. And they've changed their whole lifestyle. Yeah. Like one guy, you know, came back for 5 years, and he's like, you literally changed my life. The first 2 hours, the first morning he hunted with me, he was throwing up. And then he ended up shooting an elk on the last day, and it was he just broke down and started crying. Like he had never in his life done something so challenging and so fulfilling. And then the next year he's like, I'm really changing my lifestyle. Yeah. And to me, that was the coolest thing to ever see, is like when somebody goes out and hunts with you and understands what you do and why you love it and how hard it is, and they're like, I'm going to change the way I do my entire life so I can come back next year and do this.
That's pretty satisfying.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Like that, awesome. I've got so much respect for that.
Did you? And I'm sure you did, because a lot of us did it that were guiding. There was that point when you had a new client that you didn't know, and usually like the first day or so, you'd test a guy. Usually, at least I usually did. I wanted to see. You just get a sense for, you know, what kind of shape a guy's in, and you'd push guys a little bit. Usually, I didn't run another point of puking, but it's like you would want to find out what a guy was like, and it's funny too. And as I talk about this, you know, and you get the guys like these obnoxious guys that you might not like and didn't get along with, and there was always like then the punishment day. You know, it'd be like the long, hard, hot, you know, just some nasty, brutal hike. The
thing that
and like you said, you never let the guy catch you. And he's like stuck.
So the funny thing is, like, I have this thing where it doesn't matter if you're the biggest a-hole. If I hate you, I am going to do my best for you. Like, I just can't. Yeah. I can't do anything else. I know nothing else. I just love to hunt elk, and I'm going to do my best.
You want to get him an elk.
But if you are an a-hole, I will hunt you harder than I will the nice guy. You will generally you get the punishment walk, but it's generally rewarded in bigger elk. So the guys that I hate always shot bigger stuff, because it's just like I was just grinding them. I'm like, you know what? I know where I can find easy elk, but I know where I can find hard elk too. And we're going to go after the hard elk. And when you go after hard elk, they're generally bigger elk. And so it's kind of funny. Like, I'd come back to camp, and they're like, man, the jerk got the biggest bull. And I was like, yeah, but he's not going to walk next week. But that was that was when I was a lot younger. And you didn't really, you kind of, I don't know. I wouldn't change it, and I wasn't bad, but there's also, you just kind of, when a guy is an a-hole to you, and you just are like, you're over it. You don't want to, if you hike, they can't talk. So it's just, you don't get like, like, I don't want to talk with this guy. Like, how do I not talk? Oh yeah, when you can't breathe, you can't talk. Just walk faster.
Yeah. Somewhere out there's a dude with a 400-inch bull taking a strong look inward right now.
Like, wait a second.
I only got this because I was a real a-hole. I feel like that kind of brings up a little bit of the question I'm sure you get asked all the time, but it's just, you know, you really like hunting, and you're taking a ton of other people out hunting? Like, when do you get to hunt for yourself, or does it ever get old where you're like, man, I do all the work, and, granted, somebody else has to come along with me this one time, but otherwise, the entire year I'm doing all this work, and then somebody else is going to shoot it.
To me, I think it's almost more satisfying.
Yeah,
in
a way,
strange
that's true.
way.
Yeah, sometimes what I would end up thinking about is, and it is. I mean, as a guide, you are very wrapped in wanting to kill something. It's as personally important to you as it is to the hunter. And a lot of times I would almost get myself, like, I would think of the hunter as just like my tool. He was like my way of killing something. So it was like, I have the gun, he's got the gun, he's pulling the trigger, but it's like I'm pulling him, I'm steering him to do this and kill it. And that, to me, then it just sort of felt like it was even more satisfying because you were able to get this guy that might have, lesser skills to go out and kill something, and you were kind of the reason that happened.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was.
Well, I mean, you're helping out with a really, really big gift. I mean, like, for some of these guys, I mean, you get repeat clients, but, I mean, you really are assisting them with an experience of a lifetime.
Yeah, and I think part of it, too, is I always said, I'm doing everything but pulling the trigger. Like, and to me, that, like, even sometimes, making sure that they get the right shot, like setting the rifle up properly. And
everything.
And and even guys that hunt a lot, a guy that hunts a lot, but when you hunt professionally, you're hunting, there's a guy that hunts a lot and there's a guy that hunts all the time. Mm-hmm. And the guy that hunts all the time will notice things that other people don't. And if somebody's willing to listen to that guy, one, you'll be more successful, because I'll know when we set that rifle up, that guy might get one shot. And if I see that rifle set up in a way that I know is a smaller percentage of him killing it, then I'll make adjustments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and every little thing,
because I know when that trigger goes off, he needs to make that shot. And we always shoot before, so the guide always has you shoot the rifle before you hunt, and it's not to see if your rifle's sighted, and it's to see how you can shoot, to watch your body, to see the way that you set up a rifle, to see the way you handle a rifle, to see the way that you zoom a scope.
I mean, flinches, jumps back from the gun,
and so it might be a thing where he's set up, and I just reach in and zoom it and check and make sure the butts, everything. Like it sounds like, oh, he's micromanaging and I know how to hunt. But yeah, you do know how to hunt, but do you know for 100% certain that you're going to make that shot right now?
Yeah.
And a lot of people think they do, but I've seen enough misses where I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
If you interject like that experience into the scenario, it's way closer to 90+% when it might be a 50%
absolutely
type deal.
Yeah. Absolutely right.
So add to the repertoire of a guide, firearms instructor.
Yes.
Oh, no question. Yeah, no question.
There's been a lot of times that I've come out of the field and I just go for half a day. We're gonna relearn how to shoot. And if you listen and want to do it, and every time we've done that, nobody's missed after that I can think of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you just start from the basics again. And there's a lot. I mean, I've missed as well. And a lot of times when I miss, it's just, I don't even know, maybe just getting too excited or who knows? You just missed. It happens. Yeah. But a lot of times, when somebody's there and helping you through it, you can generally make it work.
Yeah. It's definitely true. And we did the same thing too. We would always have, when a guy you'd always watch him shoot, both archery and rifle. And it was funny, generally it seemed like I was usually not expecting guys to shoot all that well. And it just seemed that was the case. More often than not, guys could not shoot that well. And when you could sit a guy down, we just have a basic bench set up for guys. You'd shoot at 100 yards at a paper target. But when I'd see guys and they could actually hold a tight group at 100, I mean, I was always just very, very happy about that, because usually what I expected to see was, a 10-inch group and the guy flinching and jumping back off the gun and just not shooting well,
What I started doing about probably once I started my own outfitting business, and it was actually, this ties in with Vortex really well, because I got the HSLR.
Oh, yeah.
That was my first turret rifle.
Yeah.
And I had a great muzzle brake on my gun. It was a 300 short mag, and it doesn't kick at all.
Mark.
And Mark shot it.
There you go,
The
Mark.
gun's name's
Yeah.
Hannah.
You need to get one of those.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the Wisdom, and actually, yeah, you're right. I
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
get to shoot that.
You've got the
rifle.
wisdom that's the opposite. That you got the wisdom
Yeah.
that hits you
Yeah,
like it hates you.
The,
The
bad,
horrible
the
wisdom.
bad wisdom. Yeah,
Yeah, because anybody can develop bad shooting habits by shooting a gun. Like it's your body. It's so hard to break. Like I've had that happen. I started shooting a big caliber at too young of an age, and you just develop like bad habits.
Yep.
But I set that rifle up where I knew that where it hit, and then I could adjust the turret and know where it hits it every. So my thing was, if you put the crosshair where you say you're going to hit it, shoot, and it misses, it's not the gun 100% because I know exactly where it'll shoot. So they would shoot their gun and it'd be all over the place, and then I would have them. I'd kind of coach them. I'd say, okay, you can use my gun, but you have to follow my rules to use my gun. And I'd say, okay, this is how you set it up, this, that, and the other thing. Boom, shoot, and is the best they've ever shot in their life. And you go, okay, now
then
we're
they're
just gonna
feeling
use this
good
gun.
about themselves.
Yeah, and I was like,
confident
everybody that left my camp like would buy that scope because they're like, it's the scope, and it is partially the scope, but it's knowing where that is. And then those guys would get into like, then they had more invested in just going out and shooting 3 rounds because there's like a science behind it and ballistics and all that.
Yeah.
And it's like to have something like that where you're interested in it, it becomes an activity, not just, oh, I'm a hunter and then I shoot my gun literally to sight it in once a year and that's it.
Right.
You become invested in like testing it and figuring out what everything does, and it becomes
learning how to shoot.
and you become a better shot and you
yeah.
become a better hunter.
Yeah.
As far as rifle hunting goes.
Yeah, that really goes into what you're talking about earlier about the jack of all trades. Because I mean, a lot of people, a lot of times think of they think of the precision rifle guys, the PRS competitors, those kinds of people as being the ones who spend all that time figuring out ballistics and all these various different firearms characteristics and stuff. But I mean, if you're really going to be a good hunter, you're going to be doing the same stuff, and yeah, as a guide, if you're going to be taking people out there, and helping them out, you have to know that as well.
Well, I think that removes some of the mystery too, like, kind of getting more familiar with your firearm and the ballistics, and not only are you shooting more, but you realize what you can do and what a rifle can do, and then I just feel like you put all that, like you said, you put that effort into it, and then you understand that like it's not like black magic that you hit a deer at 200 yards. Like it wasn't guesswork. It wasn't that you're just like, no, like I know that I'm going to kill that deer.
Yeah. Well, when you came out, Mark came out to my place, was it quite a while, a few years ago,
3 or 4 years
ago. And I busted Hannah out, the old 300 WSM, and I was just talking about, I do this. I have this 400-yard gong, and I'm like, I shoot that offhand. He's like, no way. And then I did it with it twice, and then, and I was like, I can teach you to do that. And then we did a little walkthrough. Boom, hit it 400 yards offhand. Mark did.
Yeah,
it's like,
that's pretty
but
good,
you're like, okay, you don't realize with just some basic mechanics and the turret and everything set right. Like, it's not that difficult. You just the center is the same size no matter what the target is. You just have to put the crosshair where you want it and pull the trigger. And that's, like, I like to do that with people and just kind of surprise them as far as, when you're guiding, I've shot every make of rifle, every caliber, like, you know it too, Paul. You can, I almost see, like, you tell me the caliber and I see a trajectory path. Like I could grab some guy's rifle and just shoot it out to whatever, because I know based on the post and how high to hold and you just kind of like, it's not so scientific as just shooting all the time and different calibers and different scopes and different rifles. You kind of get like this sixth sense of where that bullet's going to hit. And it's kind of fun to get to do that.
It's funny too, because you were talking about actually a number of the things I was paralleling in a way to, like, if you're a chef, and by no means do I fancy myself a chef, but I do like cooking for other people, and it's kind of like after a while you cook so much, you don't use teaspoons and tablespoons anymore. It's like, oh, this recipe calls for cumin. Like, I know what cumin tastes like. I know how much food is in the pan. I know what I'm trying to make it do in that, so I'll just sprinkle some in, and then, then a lot of people are like, "You're not even measuring that." Well, no, I don't need to. And then the other thing that I was paralleling too was that when you're a chef, you do a lot of the work and you make a lot of the food, and then other people end up eating it. So like they cook it with you, but it makes you feel really good when they eat it, and they have a really good eating experience.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good comparison for sure.
That is, and just like you said, the more you do something, the more familiar, and just like you're guiding, right? Like I remember when you're like, you shot that gong, I was like, yeah, that's pretty impressive. It's not a big gong.
No.
It's like, what, 9-inch gong maybe?
Yeah, something.
I don't, and you're like, hey, you want to do it? And we're kind of wrapping up what we're doing for the day. I'm like, I'm good. And I'm like, all right, no, I got to try it. And so like I grabbed Remi's gun, and, you had the dope for you dialed the turret for 4. And I threw the gun up. I mean, it was like pretty warbly. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, okay, let me see what this trigger's like. I'm like, okay, cool, that's the trigger. Then I threw the gun up again, and you had a sling on it. So I wrapped the sling around it and got a little bit more stable, knew what the trigger was going to be like. And, again, like you kind of know the more you shoot. Like, I mean, the crosses were definitely moving, but you just kind of break. It's almost like you almost use your little brain supercomputer and break the shot. Now, granted, I'm not going to say I'm going to do that 10 out of 10 times, but it worked once, and I definitely walked away after that one time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Been there, done it. Yeah.
But no, I mean, I've done that with a lot of different guys, and I don't know. I'm not saying like
I used to feel
take
so special.
400-yard whatever shot, but I'm just saying like if you go out and have fun and shoot your gun, you're just gonna be better in the field with it.
Yeah.
I love to just take a 20 if I'm like, and I do it with my bow too or whatever. Just go out and plink around. Like bow hunters are good at it because you can shoot your bow all the time, but you don't have a lot of opportunity to just shoot a rifle. But I like to take like a 22 out and just open sights and just shoot at stuff, shoot targets or whatever. Like it's fun, plink around, just try stuff that you wouldn't try. Oh yeah, take the 22 out and see if you can hit that can at 200 yards with the open sights. And eventually, if you can see where you're hitting, you'll adjust. And it's like you used to do as a kid, taking the BB gun out.
Oh yeah.
You become pretty good with
visualizing that
trajectory.
Yeah.
It's fun to. I don't know. I always stress that with guys and even clients is just get out. And a lot of the guys that come back, it's cool because they've taken shooting as, or like at least the rifle clients, is like, being in shape as far as elk hunting goes, being in shape and shooting their guns seriously because they know that that's what it's going to come down to for them to be successful. And that's cool to see. I love that.
Yeah. This is a little bit of a gear switch, but guides sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I mean, we have you guys on here because you're the guide pros, and I'm not. But guides sometimes wind up working with the state, or maybe outfitters wind up working with the state as far as, like some hunts you can't go on in certain states if you don't have a guide, or like do you wind up working with the state maybe in other ways as far as various different herds that they're trying to manage in different ways or anything like that, or
not where I'm at. I think a lot of the states that have the regulations, it's like the outfitting industry creates these regulations to protect their industry.
Yeah, exactly.
I personally even though I'm an outfitter, I'm against that.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's, especially when it happens on public land, like it's kind of a weird deal to say, oh, you're capable enough to go into the wilderness on your own and fly fish or backpack, but you want to hunt, you can't go hunting. Yeah, you don't have the skill to hunt. Huh. Or, especially on federal land, like I think that's a really weird deal. Or you go somewhere, and I understand, okay, some places go, well, it's a safety concern. But I've met people that live in some states that are allowed to go on some of these hunts. It's like, if it's a safety concern, then you should do some kind of proficiency litmus test like other countries do, and the people that are proficient at it and have worked up to it are allowed to hunt that species if it's a safety concern.
And it's not.
And it's not a safety concern.
It's a
because you could go on the same, we'll say Alaska or whatever. You could go on a Sitka blacktail hunt that are right next to mountain goats, but you can't hunt the mountain goats.
Yeah.
It's the same place. Like you're doing the exact same thing.
Same weather, same rocks, same same hypothermia, all of it. Yeah, it's not a.
I was glassing a goat on Kodiak, and in my field of view, I'm like, what the heck is that thing moving above the goat? I'm like, oh, that's a deer. Like you said, they're in the exact same place.
Exact same place. So what's the real justification? Well, it's to protect outfitting and create a market. But there's always going to be that market. Now you might be protecting it from a number of out-of-state hunters, but you could always regulate the number of out-of-state hunters. So I don't understand. I think it's just like an antiquated system that, in Montana, we used to get unlimited tags for our clients, which I thought, but it was at a higher price. And then it got voted out during a ballot initiative. And I thought that was good because the people going with a guide, you're creating industry in the state of these people are going here and the money's coming into the state and the state's going to collect revenue on it. But all that money paid for block management, which allowed public access to private lands that outfitters were not allowed to use. Yeah. And they sold out every year and the price was double what they dropped it down to, and for quite a few years, block management got underfunded. And people will probably listen to this and be like, no, they're selling out. Yeah, they would sell out, and then they would have 5,000 left over at the end of the season. They struggled making that money back for a long time, and now the market's kind of caught up, and last year was the first year. But still, at least Montana, the way that their system is, a lot of people are drawing the tags and not wanting them. They just want the points for special units. Yeah, it's kind of
tags back.
Right, and what people don't realize is that's funding for block management, and block management seems to be getting, in my opinion, less and less. So, there are some programs where you could work with outfitters and be like, look, well, let's raise money for the people, if you have some kind of, you don't want this many non-residents or whatever hunting your areas, that's fine. Figure out a way to limit that, but also, help everybody else out that lives in that state and give them more opportunity. I don't see any problems with that. But I don't really like limiting people and making them, pay for a not everybody, even as an outfitter, I'm like, okay, if you run a good business and you know what you're doing, you're gonna find people to book with you. And it doesn't create a thing where it's like, hey, if these non-residents can't hunt this area, they have to hire me. I don't have to be a good outfitter. I don't have to know what I'm doing. I could just be a complete disaster because they have no other choice, really.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a weird thing.
Well, it is. And like you said, there's no litmus test. You might not be able to go hunt a wilderness area as an out-of-stater in Wyoming, but if I was just coming from out of state and I wanted to go pick wildflowers in the same country,
you can do it.
I can do it.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I love wildflowers.
I don't know. Maybe there's some outfitters like, this guy's an idiot. I'm like, look, I make my living doing that same thing, but I also feel like it shouldn't affect it. It'll probably just, in all honesty, it might, make people better and book more hunts because you're getting more animals because you have to put more energy in because it's a free market. It's an open market.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and like you said too, if you just provide a good service, you're no matter what, you're going to get clients, you're going to get business.
Yeah, and you're going to get better guides because you're going to get a better reputation, and it's going to be a better experience for people, and people will be then pining to get in more. There's going to be more applications. You're going to be skimming the states are going to be skimming those application fees off the top, raking it in like a bunch of drug dealers weighing their money in trucks.
I got them tags, homie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
it really
donations.
should. You think about like the wilderness areas in Wyoming. Some of that country is big, deep, hard, tough country, and there's undoubtedly many people that, even if they had the choice to go DIY or outfit, if they truly want to go in there and get an animal, they're probably going to go outfit it. Unless they've got their own horses and gear and logistics to handle all of that stuff. That's the country where being an outfitter makes the most sense. It shouldn't require that it be mandatory. I think it's
it makes
self-explanatory. The guys that need it are going to need it, and the truly hardcore DIY guys, well, let those guys go in and hunt it on their own. It's not
because if you go and get in over your head, you can do that anywhere at any time.
Yeah.
And I think most people are smart enough. Most people don't want to kill themselves, really. Right. And there are a few idiots, and if they get weaned out of the gene pool.
I was just gonna say, is it bad for me to say natural selection on this podcast?
No. And some of it is like daunting because you could go to do the same thing in Idaho, but if you aren't prepared for it, you aren't prepared for it. It doesn't matter where you're at.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting topic. I think I'm sure there's a lot of debate and whatever, but that's just my personal belief on it is if you have a justification for something, either just call it what it is. Like, no, we're just protecting our outfitting industry. Don't make up some BS story about it being about safety or other things when there's no test of who can go out there and how much knowledge they have, this, that, and the other thing.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Kind of circling back to your question a little bit, Jimmy, I know areas that we outfitted in, we didn't necessarily really work with the state or anything like that, but we worked pretty tightly with fish and game guys and wardens, and we would we would generally turn, if we saw guys poaching or doing illegal things, we would generally try to contact wardens and get guys caught doing that sort of thing. And there were times when we would run into people that we knew were probably on the edge of trouble or a little over their heads in some of the country they were hunting, and we would go out of our way to let them know that we were in that area and working with them, and check and see if people needed help sometimes. So you kind of function as that role, I think, a little bit, as just people with the experience and the equipment, and you're operating in some of those deep backcountry areas. That they're just like you were, the natural selection stuff. There's guys that get back in there and they're over their heads on stuff, and it definitely comes into play a little bit.
Yeah, it happens, and that's the nice thing is there's a presence of somebody that knows the area and is experienced back there, and it would be a pretty weird deal to just be out there and not, we're all hunters.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, and I don't know, maybe I'm just a little bit different. Like, I don't see myself in competition with everybody else out there. I just see myself as another hunter out there. And, we're going to do our thing and you're going to do your thing. And a lot of times, like if I run into a guy, let's work together. There's been times where we've been, well, why don't we both go in there and shoot two bulls instead of one guy shoot one and the other guy chase another? Or, I'm going to go this way, you go that way. I saw some here yesterday. Like, I'm not lying to you. I'm actually saw some there. You know what I mean? There's
for sure.
There's been so many times where we've, or repassed something up and shown another guy and he's gone and shot it. And it just, I don't know. But there are those other instances where it just depends on where you are. And I think a lot of the like competition between outfitters and other hunters comes when it deals with like trophy animals.
I'm sure
I think that's
situation.
Because like people believe that, I'm getting paid so I own this animal and we're going to do everything in our power for you not to get it. And I think that's wrong. So I see where sometimes outfitters get like a bad rap, but I don't think everybody's like that.
Yeah. So you were saying that as an outfitter, you'll get and own tags or permits, or like it seems as though if you're a guide or an outfitter, like Paul, you got to go, for example, on a lot of sheep hunts, right? As a guide.
Yeah.
Now, that's not because you obviously were drawing sheep tags every year, because sheep tags are super hard to get.
Exactly.
How did that work where you guys, as your outfitter, had sheep tags every year?
Yeah,
how does that happen?
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly how it does. So, you're exactly. We weren't drawing the tags. The clients were drawing the tags. But what happened is the fellow that I worked for had built a reputation in Idaho over the years as a very, very successful, very talented sheep guide. And the other part of that puzzle comes back to what I said about the state of Idaho. Outfitters have specific geographic territories. And so if you were to overlay the ranges of bighorn sheep in the state of Idaho, they're absolutely not all over the state. They're confined to sort of specific mountain ranges and areas. So what happens is there are some outfitters that have really good sheep areas. Their whole permit area might have sheep habitat all over it. Some outfitters have no sheep territory at all. So the fellow I worked for, he had a really good area. He had a lot of the top sheep habitat in the state. Coincidentally, he developed himself into a great sheep outfitter, very successful, knowledgeable. I caught my bug from him, from working for him doing it. So what happens is he builds a client base over the years. And so in the state of Idaho, typically there really are only maybe eight non-resident sheep tags typically that come up in a year. And that's just based on what the Fish and Game puts out in their numbers. But what Mike would have is he might have 200 to 300 people every year that would apply through him. If they drew, they were going to hunt with Mike.
So when you
So
say
they were
applied
all applying, but yet in a
through-
year, maybe 4 of those guys would actually draw a tag, and it would vary by year. Some years it might be a couple more, some years it might be less. You never knew. As an outfitter for sheep in Idaho, believe me, Mike, the day those draw results came out, he was on it because, there you're hoping, fingers crossed that a bunch of your clients drew those tags and then guys booked the hunts and then there's your fall laid out ahead of you.
I see. So when people would book through him, it was almost like, obviously they didn't have the tag at that point when they booked, but they were just letting him know that, hey,
they wanted to hunt sheep.
Okay.
They might know the units they want to put in, or in Idaho, some units they're all pretty tough in that state, but some are tougher than others. And Mike would actually do a good job of matching clients to units. He knew the easier sheep units, so the guys that were not in quite as good a shape, he would suggest those guys apply in those units. And the guys that were really fit and tough and hardcore, he might have those guys apply in tougher units to, kind of even things out.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily like the outfitter would get tags for stuff and then they would sell it to people who wanted to go.
Not in the instance of sheep tags, but that does happen. All the states are different. Idaho, there are outfitter allocated tags that are specifically set aside out of the general pool of tags for clients of outfitters. And so those, every state's different. They all work differently, but a lot of states have something like that. And then the other thing Idaho has, which a lot of other states have, is there are landowner tags that are given to private landowners that have, typically a certain amount of habitat that's being used by big game in the winter, maybe like winter range stuff, and they, in return for supporting the general population of big game, they're given tags. In some states they can sell them, some states they can't sell them. They're all a little bit different, but I know we would have some tags that were specific outfitter allocated tags. We'd have tags that clients applied for and drew on their own. And then we would also buy some of those landowner tags for. So it was a blend of different things.
Gotcha. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. I think for the sheep hunts, it's all guys drawing the tag on their own.
It is, yeah.
I had this one instance where we took this guy elk hunting, and we see sheep all the time. He's like, I want one of those. I was like, well, got to apply for it.
Not like a grocery store.
No, yeah. And he's like, oh, I want to book. So at the end of his trip, he's like, I want to book a sheep hunt for next year. I was like, no, we don't book the sheep hunts. You draw the tag, and then we book the hunt. And I was like, the application's in May. He's like, oh, okay. So I just contact you in May again to book the hunt. I was like, no. He just didn't understand.
Couldn't get it through.
I've put in my entire life and not drawn one. So he calls me in May. He's like, I want to book that sheep hunt. I was like, look, man, I'll give you the units to apply for. When you get a tag,
call me.
Yeah. Right? So I give him the unit. The draws come out. He calls me. And I'm like, Montana has an unlimited sheep area, but we don't have permits there. We don't guide there.
Yeah.
Our area is like 0.01% draws. I think there was 2 tags. We had to die off, so it went from 14 tags to 2 tags.
Down enough.
And he calls me and he's like, I got my sheep tag. I want to book my hunt. I'm like, oh my gosh. You cannot put in for the unlimited sheep tag and then come hunt our area. And he's like, oh. And I said, send me your information. I'll look it up, just to see. I was like, maybe I'll figure out which unlimited area he got and I'll send him to someone that has that. He drew the freaking sheep.
I was just going to say, lo and behold, the guy drew. Yeah, that's amazing.
And then he didn't even know what he had. So me and my brother are guiding him, and we always try to look for
protection.
we always look for the biggest sheep, mature. Everything we've gotten there's been Boone and Crockett size. Yeah. And there's not real big ones in this area, but there is that upper echelon.
Nice rams.
Yeah, really good rams. And we always try to take the oldest, because we're kind of the guys managing the unit, really, because if you're the guy and you're guiding most of the sheep hunters in there, then you're the guy that's looking
making
after the herd and what's going to be there in the future. So we're really, really picky, and we're going to look over almost every sheep in this unit before we decide which one we're going to shoot. And he's like, I just want to shoot one. He's like, okay. And so we get out there, and after 2 days, he's like, we get into this band of rams, and he's like, you guys better decide or I'm shooting that one. now. And he was dead serious and put one in. This
Oh,
banana
gosh.
ram walks out. And we're like, whoa. Okay. So we're talking, and he's like, hurry up. He's got like 10 seconds.
I'm over.
He's like, I'm
over the sheep thing.
He's
now.
like, I
Yeah,
just want some
yeah,
meat.
yeah.
So we're like, okay, that ram. So he shoots it, and it ends up being 180-inch
a nice
big
Oh
ram.
my gosh.
And he's like, cool. And then he's like, he just wanted the meat. And we're like, you don't want the horns or the cape? He's like, no. I was like, can we have it? I'll mount it and put it in my cabin. He's like, yeah. And then he decided, I think he wanted the horns for his son's flower garden. Like, he didn't know what he had. And it's just like, it broke my heart. Because all I've ever wanted since I was a kid was a sheep tag
Draw
in
a
that
sheep
unit.
tag, yeah.
And no, but he's just like, I want to book a sheep one.
Gosh, I feel like
All right, cool,
quite a
Remy. Well,
story.
I'll let you know when I get my sheep tag in May next year.
Yeah, exactly. But I
Dude.
did get to keep the cape, which I sold.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But
That is a wild
Yeah,
story.
that's something.
Yeah,
that's the way the
insane.
luck of those draws.
yeah, but
plays
it's
out
just funny. It was the
sometimes.
first time he'd applied. He just had no clue what he had.
Yeah, and it's, when we were talking about that Jimmy where we had all those guys that put in every year, and some years that's exactly the way it play out. You get guys they'd put in very first year and they draw one, and other guys would 20, 30 years and never draw. And Idaho had no preference, and they still don't. There are no preference points there.
totally random.
State of Idaho, everybody's in. It just starts over every year. So a guy that puts in the first time has exactly the same odds as a guy that's put in for 30 years.
Yeah,
No,
I'm
so
sure
it's,
some people love it, and I'm sure some people hate that.
Yeah, that's a topic for another podcast one day. There's a lot of interesting things about draws and points that are going on in the West, and the whole model of points is really kind of falling apart these days. So, in some ways, if you look at it closely, what Idaho does, to me anyway, makes actually a lot of sense. I think it works better than a lot of the point systems that are in place in states.
Yeah. It just depends too. But when you've been doing like in some states, I have over 20 points now. Like you don't want it to go to a no point system because
exactly once you're in the game,
I'm
once you're in
invested.
the game,
And to think about
it's tough.
Oh,
if you
man,
just
yeah.
really think about the money or at least the money that I've spent on tag draws, I'm like I could have just saved that and bought a sheep. But
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
almost literally like if you had a savings account in the U.S. just
Yeah.
decided to say, "Oh, money is worthless. Now we're switching over to paying."
Yeah, that's
and,
exactly.
Exactly.
Yep. It's like
Yeah.
the whole
like
currency
sand or
resets.
something.
Yeah. But now there is a thing where it's like point creep, and at one point I had enough to draw a tag, but now I no longer. It's kind of a weird. You keep trying to get to this level of
and
preference
it's always
points.
just out of your grasp.
Yeah, that's right.
It's ahead of you.
My thing is I like the bonus point system where you're rewarded for every year of application, maybe an exponentially.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
But anybody can still draw, so you still have a chance of being lucky, but your chance of being lucky increases the longer you play.
Right.
Yeah.
That's my preferred. But I've drawn 2 sheep tags in my home state of Nevada, and then I've drawn 2 sheep tags in Alaska, so I've
Yeah, you're doing
been,
pretty well.
pretty good.
Yeah.
But that's in 20 years of applying.
Yeah.
So and
It's wild, man.
So my only non-resident sheep tags have been in Alaska, which you have to go with a guide.
Yep.
Which
Yeah.
Is it weird going with a guide when you're a guide?
No, not really.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I've been in the same boat. I'd
and
say not really
It's not
either,
really
yeah.
no, because one, it's like my really good friend. His name's Jeremy Rusink, and I'll just give him a plug. It's Rogue Expeditions in Alaska, and it's like, all right, you're really just hunting with your friend, or other guides that work for him that you hang out with. And I think when like I've guided other guides too, and for me, it's more like I'll show you the area. You have like this understanding of this guy knows how to hunt, so you can hunt more like friends, but you're fulfilling the requirements of a guide. Where it's like I've guided guides, and it's more of like I let them hunt how they want to hunt, but I'll also, give suggestions and whatever. And you just kind of, I don't know, it's almost easier really because
I
you're
totally
hunting,
agree
you're
with that.
hunting
Yeah.
together, not
Yeah.
for.
Yeah. They also
So-
probably also get like the pain in the butt stuff that guides have to deal with. They're
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I'm not gonna, like leave whatever a complete mess and be a big, dick or whatever in camp and then
Yeah.
make this guy have to clean up
Well,
everything.
or even just from experience, like he's a capable dude. Like
Right.
hey,
that's
if you go over there, like I know you're gonna by and large
you're not going
be all right.
get lost in 10 minutes of walking away in the trees.
Yeah.
You have some woodsmanship.
Yeah, it's more of like a hunt. Yeah, I think it's just more like hunting with your buddies, where you're hunting together. You're being guided, or you're guiding, whichever end of the spectrum you're on. But you're doing it in a different way than you do. I think it's actually like a lot easier. It's actually a very successful way to hunt.
Yeah,
it really is, because it's two people that are highly skilled.
Yeah.
Working together. And that's like,
right.
That's why people are like, oh, well, I don't think that no matter how good of a hunter you are, it never hurts to have a guide, especially on like tags where it's a once in a lifetime type opportunity. I'm not against that in any way as a guide. I'm like, that's your best chance, is to work with someone that, to build a team of people that's like, we've all got the skills. Now we can go out and have a phenomenal hunt. I think that most guides are like that, but that's maybe me being optimistic. Agree. But I think that it's a cool understanding.
That meshes my experience too. And when I've hunted with guides, it almost feels like more of a partnership. And I think of when I'm going in with a guide, what I know that guy's doing for me is I would typically be hunting country I've never hunted before, have never been in before, and I just know that guy. Hey, he's been in there, he's spent the time, he's put the hours in. He knows where the trails are. He knows where the animals move. He knows where the wallows are. He knows, all that stuff that, if I had been in there for a year, 2 years, 3 years, I'd have all that figured out the exact same way he does. But it just shortcuts all of it. You've got a guy that's got equivalent skills. Yeah, I agree. It's a partnership thing.
And I think it's cool too, is like you learn things from other people that you might find a new way of doing something that you didn't do before. And in certain, like I've gone out with some of my guide buddies in New Zealand that grew up hunting thick jungle type country, where I'm more open. And so I kind of teach them the glassing skill and like spotting far away, and they teach me a little bush stalking. And it's like, you both have skills, but you've honed it in a certain way for a certain animal.
Yeah.
And it's like you can pick up some things, little tips here and there of, you might be looking at a new animal and learn how to judge it quickly, or what they're looking for, or this is where I look. Because, when you go out to glass next to a guy that hunts that area every day, he's picking out the animals first. One, it's because he knows what he's looking for, but two, he knows where to look. There's 90% of the country that holds 0 animals, and 10% holds 90%. It's kind of a it's a weird thing. And if you know where to look in what area, you're just fast tracking yourself to success, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, this is maybe not related to guiding, but it kind of goes into that, what you were talking about. Even just hunting a variety of things, I think makes you a more well-rounded hunter. Like, I grew up hunting blacktails on the coast. Dude, I didn't even, it was pretty thick, but there was, clear cuts and some big canyons you could look across. But, dude, I maybe it's because I didn't have any money, but I didn't even have a set of binoculars. But now, I look back, and I've hunted coos deer now, and I'm like, dude, if I go back to blacktail country and I'm looking at some clear cuts far away, you better believe I'm going to have a tripod and a set of 12s and be tearing it apart versus just relying on, just my eyes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's pretty cool. Well, looks like by the old shot clock that MC Ryan's rocking over there, we're at about a little over an hour here. So what do you say? You want to last call this bad boy, Mark?
I've got one more question.
Do it. How about this? We'll make this a collective last call. Your question?
I don't want to do that.
Can I address the duck in the room first? Is anyone hearing this?
He's going nonstop.
That's not your sleep. That's not your sleep deprivation.
We should have mentioned that first thing, because we were like, what is going on back there? At first I had to take my thing off. I'm like, is this in the headphones?
There's duck insanity going on.
So, am I sleep deprived?
Remi, that's not happening. That's just you.
We are at the Western Hunting Conservation Expo for those listening, and there is a waterfowl calling competition around here, and they designated this hallway near our podcast room as the practice hallway.
That's what's going
on.
So
they're warming up those.
They're hard at it back there.
Warming up those calls. All right, Mark.
And they're doing a heck of a good job.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I guess my one question was, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, but for a person who is looking into being a guide, right? They're like, oh, I want to go do that. I guess to me it would seem like on the surface, like, yes, you have a desire to hunt, right? Like, oh, I love to hunt, so I want to be able to hunt all the time. But I mean, guiding it isn't the same as hunting, you know. So I guess what characteristics do you think a person or an outlook a person would have to have on that to like be successful long term?
I think it's a perseverance thing. Like, I know a lot of people that are like, they love to hunt.
Right.
They love to hunt for 5 or 6 days at the like, that's a long trip for a lot of people.
Yeah.
To be able to hunt, every day of the week. Then on the week, and if you want to hunt for yourself, you're hunting the weekends, and it's easy. You just got to be the type of personality that doesn't get burned out.
Yeah,
like you have to. It's a completely different type of personality.
Yeah, we'd start like hunting archery elk at the end of August, and I mean some even before that. If we had sheep hunters in, we'd be scouting sheep places in the middle of August, and it just run pretty much nonstop till late November, and it just was you got done with one hunt, you came in, washed your laundry, and the next morning it's the next guys were there, and out you went again, and you had to really love doing it, and you had to have some endurance and perseverance, and I'd say, I mean, you just got to be very flexible. I saw a lot of guys come and go while I was guiding. And I saw some guys that were, I mean, really good hunters, better hunters than I was. I mean, really talented at hunting. But whatever it was, a mix of different things. Some guys had bad personalities. Some guys drank too much, and it could be something as simple as, clients typically bring a lot of alcohol in camp, and some guys just can't help, and they drink beer all night with the clients, and then you can't keep going like that. It doesn't work. There are so many little things. It would be really interesting to pin it down. And I think when I went back to that guide school, and I think at the time there was maybe 15 of us in there, and most of them were. I was in my later 20s at the time, and most of them were younger than I was. And right off the bat, you could see guys that you knew weren't going to make it. I mean, there were guys that they'd go out in the wilderness and get lost. They just couldn't. There were parts and pieces of it they could not hack, and they could do some of it, but not all of it. And I think back to those days, and I think I later ran into one other guy that was in that, and I think there were only two of us that really kept at it and lasted for a long period of time. So I think a lot of guys try it, but find out there's some part of it that just does not work. I think the
attrition rate of guide school is like less than medical school.
Yeah,
it's so bad.
It's way up there. Yeah. It's just some kids that they find they were terrified of horses. They just couldn't deal with horses. There's just so many. There's so many little to make it long term. Yeah.
I helped out with like a guide school thing once, and I just had one of the guys in my truck, and we drive up to a gate, and I'm like, okay, now you got to, he's in the passenger seat. Like, you get the gate. So he gets the gate, gets out, and I'm watching from my rearview mirror. He gets the gate, comes and closes it, and he's on the other side and then climbs over, right? And then I'm like, okay, I'm not going to say anything. No, and I'm like, okay. And then we get to the next gate, and he does the same thing. And I'm like, okay, well, now we're coming up to like a big, like a 6 foot like deer fence kind of thing, like a 6 foot
what's
big
he gonna
gate.
do now?
And he gets to it and shuts it, and I see him looking, and he's like, I'm like, well, this is a lost. I was like,
this decision.
You should.
You just drive off
I was like, this is a one and done thing for me. I'm no longer going to be teaching at this guide school. I was like, I just couldn't handle it. I just thought this is so bad. I was like, this is
immediately fail.
Yeah, I was like, I'm sorry, but it's just not going to work for you, pal. It's not, because you just need that little bit of common sense, some street smarts, some wilderness smarts, some
gate smarts.
Yeah, you just have to have it.
Yeah,
and the guys, like I said, to know when you have it is the guy. I feel like I always try to I only know my experience, so I relate people to my experience, but when you work your butt off, you do everything you can. You hunt harder than you've ever hunted in your life. I mean, I hunt way harder with clients than I do for myself. It's a weird thing when you're like, I'm getting $1 an hour and I would do this every day in my life because you just love it. Like it's not for any other reason than the lifestyle of doing it.
Yeah, that's
and
exactly
it's
it. Yep.
that there's no other reason anyone would be a guide. It's because you love to do it.
Yeah.
And that's purely it.
Awesome.
I don't know if I could do it. I mean, that sounds so badass, but I just think about it. It's like, yeah, dude, I think hunting is awesome. I was just like, dude, I just don't think I could do it. But it's super cool. It's,
Yeah, it was funny,
There's a lot of things I look at that way. And it's like,
about the time I started working for your family, Jim, I'd been guiding a long time, and actually, like the first 10 years I worked for your dad, I overlapped. I was guiding half of the year and coming back and working half of the year and
that's right,
selling optics in the off season. But I did, we talked about kind of getting burned out, and I was sort of hitting a point where I was feeling a little bit burned out on guiding, and that's sort of about the time I, met you guys and sort of edged my way into the optics end of things. But I remember it, and I was very worried about that. I still deeply loved hunting in the outdoors, and I did not want to get burned out on that.
Yeah.
And I got to the point thinking, man, if I have another season, there's like a really rotten guy that I've got to spend 10 days hunting with. It's like, I don't know if I can do that anymore. I just didn't want to find myself in that, but it does wear on you at times.
And it's the people that wear you out. It's not the guiding.
No, it is. It's so
And
you can have the most miserable, rotten, hard, unsuccessful hunt, and if you're with the right guy, it's great. It's a wonderful time. And conversely, you can have the most successful hunt. You go out and kill a trophy animal, and if it's with the wrong guy, it's like you never want to do it again. It's it is really funny that way.
It goes back to what you're saying, man. That time, it is precious.
Yeah, and that's the whole reason. Like, I like to go with the repeat guys and don't like to take new people, because I did take some new guys a few years back, and it was so miserable that everybody in camp wanted to quit. The guides, the cook, myself. I was like, why am I doing this? I'm not. I sell my hunts pretty cheap.
Really
like, I don't want to be doing this for nothing anymore. Like, this sucks.
Yeah. And it's. I think back. I bet if I were to kind of just write down all the different hunts, I'll bet the hunts that I remember the most are with the right guy in the worst conditions.
Oh yeah.
Really, where a guy you really liked, had a good time, and it was just tough, whatever it was. There was something particularly hard and challenging about the hunt. And I've told guys that it's like, in the future, you're going to look back, and those are the ones that it's almost like, and I've learned now, at the time it sucks, but I know that later, it's just, I'm going to treasure that memory. Those are going to be the really good memories about doing it. Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
What do you say?
Jump into your last calls now, Jim.
My last call is, I've noticed two things. One, Paul, I don't know how you've managed to be comfortable this entire podcast. I think your earphone on the left side is actually backwards.
Is it really?
Yeah, it is. You have like the hard plastic against your ear. I don't know if it was...
It's actually pretty comfortable.
Is it really?
I can actually hear you pretty well too, but
I should try
I'm feeling it in the foam sticking out. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
I was wondering if that was on purpose or not.
Yeah, some people, I used to do that because it was hard to talk through a headset. I don't like that. Like,
it's a good,
you're in a helicopter.
Yeah.
You're like, you talked weird. Like,
oh man, my last call is going to be check out. Paul, do you have an Instagram? I don't think you have.
I don't. No, I'm a social media phobe and kind of stay away.
Yeah, I didn't think so. But if you want to see a badass, check out Remi Warren. I was going to say, if you also, Paul would be a good person. If you had an Instagram, I think it'd be pretty badass. Remi's Instagram is pretty badass, and all of his other stuff. We have like office-wide, pretty much man crush on Remi.
Yes.
Is that all right to say?
yeah, that's okay.
All right, that's it. That's my last call.
Many layers to the Remi Warren. My last call is, and this ties back into the guide school thing, I'm actually going to be starting a lawn mowing school in my yard, and I'll teach you how to run my lawn mower.
You know your yard better than anyone else.
I know it better than anybody else, and then you can mow my lawn for the summer. And then you'll be capable of mowing your own lawn someday.
That's a
that
pretty good
sort
one.
of follows the guide school pattern right there.
That is a pretty
you
good
got the general theme going there. Yeah.
I'm gonna really loop this into a lot of facets of the working of my life.
All right.
Yeah.
Paul?
I had to bring, it's fun to talk about. This brings back a lot of memories. I'm not sure at this point in my life if I'd get back into guiding again or not. But I have to say, I do. I value the time that I was able to spend sheep hunting was pretty darn cool, and I do really miss that because once when I was guiding, I got to hunt sheep every year, which is a really neat thing. And of course, now I rely on whether I can draw a tag or not, which may be pretty sparse over the rest of my life. Maybe another tag or two. But it's been fun. I've really enjoyed the conversation. A lot of memories for me.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, guiding just shaped a lot of my experiences and views, and really kind of got me to where I am today. And I still do it. I think people are like, why do you still guide? And it's just something like I've had to cut back just based on time and doing other projects and other things. But it's something that I just am so passionate about that I don't think I'll ever fully stop guiding. I might just cut it down to, like you say, like one sheep hunt a year in the future. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, maybe pick those hunts that you just really like, because it gives you an opportunity to get out there and do something that you don't get to do all the time, or do something that you really love all the time. I think that it's one of those things, if it's something you want to get into, you don't really need me to tell you how to do it. You're going to figure it out. And that's my real belief on anything. If you're really passionate about something, you will figure it out. When I was out of college, or actually I was still in college, I took the spring and summer semester and took fall off. And I just loaded up my truck and figured it out. And if I wasn't that smart, if I could figure it out, I think there's still plenty of people. And it's no more, at least for me, it's no more than just willing to work hard and give it a try. And it sounds like that's worked for Paul as well. And I see guys and they go, oh, is a guide school good? Can I become a guide that way? You can become a guide anyway.
Right.
You just have to be determined enough to do it. Are you wasting your money? Only if you give up. If you really want to do it, go do it. You don't need me to tell you how to do it. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Like literally load up your truck, go to where you want to start guiding, and just figure it out.
Yeah.
Because
That's
if you're
good
there,
advice.
you aren't going to get a job and sitting at home wishing that someone would give you a guide job. Like, I'm not going to call anybody up and say, hey, you want a guide job?
No.
But I notice, people, and I'm just saying, like, I, as other outfitters, other guides, notice the guys that are out there doing it. You'll figure it out. I promise you. You just got to go do it. Yeah. And maybe that applies to something other than guiding, but
maybe
I
life
think
in
so.
general. Yeah.
You just,
no, that's
just
good.
like,
That's very good advice.
just give yourself no other options. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, you just have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And if you don't figure it out, at least you gave it a try. But you will figure it out if that's what you want to do, for sure.
Dude, our guests keep mopping it up on these last calls, man. We won't ruin it.
No.
Let's do it. All right. We're going to sign off with the old classic bye.
Goodbye.
Adios.
Bye, everybody. All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.